In this video we discuss how security settings can be applied on the client side. So normally, for example, if you want to show or hide a control on a UX component based on the user's security role, you go to the security group setting over here and you specify which security groups are allowed to view the button, and that button will be shown or hide on the server side. But in some situations you might want to actually apply these security settings on the client side, in particular in a PhoneGap application where the user is not logged in at all when the application is initially rendered. So in this example here, we're going to basically show or hide these buttons depending on the user's current role, but we're going to do it client side. So you can see that what we've done is we've gone to this first button here, and the text on the button says only visible if the user is in sales or admin. And then we've gone and we've defined a show hide expression that uses a JavaScript function that we've defined in this component, and we'll discuss this function. And we're saying here that in role and then sales comma admin. So this function is going to return true if the user is in any of these roles, or return false if the user is not in any of those roles. And if it returns false, then this button will be hidden. And I could just as easily have moved this from the show hide expression to, say, the enable expression. And then for the second button over here, basically we've said in role of marketing. So this is only going to be shown if the user is in the current role of marketing. So these are client-side expressions. They get evaluated on the client side. So next let's go to the server-side events over here. And since this is a client-side show hide expression that we're going to be evaluating, we need to get the role that the user is in available to us on the client side. So if we go look on our server-side event over here, you can see that in the onDialog execute event, we're going to call this function called context.security.getUserRoles. And this function will return a CRLF delimited list of the roles that the user is currently in. But in order to be able to simulate this component in working preview, I've added some code here that says if context.security.getUserRoles is not valid, and which will be the case in working preview, then let's just simulate these roles. So you can see this is the type of string that this function would return when you're running live. So you can see that currently I'm simulating the user being in either sales, marketing, or management. And then once I've got the list of the roles that the user is in, I can then push that into a variable into the dialog object, so that the variable will be available client side. But since this is a CRLF delimited list, what I really want is to create a variable in the UX component that is an array. So I use this function called JSListToArray, and this function takes a CRLF delimited list like this and turns it into a JavaScript array literal like that. So this variable underbar roles now is going to have an array of all of the roles. And then I'm just basically putting some information onto the screen showing what roles the user is currently in inside a static text area over here. You can just see I've got a div called message1, a span called message1, and I'm just going to write into that span the roles that the user is currently in. So if I go here now and I run this component here, you can see that the user is in sales, marketing, and management, and therefore basically both of these buttons are visible. But if I go now and change the user roles to, say, sales to, marketing to, and then management to, and then run this, you can see now that basically neither of those two buttons is visible. So let's pause now and then take a look at how the in-role JavaScript function was defined. So we'll pause now and pick this up in the next video. So we're continuing now with our discussion of how security can be applied client side. So we've discussed how in the onDialog initialize event we're populating a variable in the UX component that contains an array of the roles that the user is in. Now this variable here could just as easily have been populated on an AJAX callback. So assuming that initially the user, that when the component ran, the user was not logged in, and then when the user logs in, you could then set this variable. But now once the variable has been set, you can see that in our show hide expressions we're calling this in-role function, and we're passing in a comma delimited list of the roles that the user must be in order to see this button. So the user must be in either sales or admin in order to see this button. So now let's go and take a look at the JavaScript function, and what we're going to do here is let's just put in a debugger here so we can actually debug into it. But the first thing to notice is that what we're doing is we're testing to see whether underbar roles exists. And the reason that we're doing that is that the client-side show hide expressions are evaluated before several times, and they're evaluated in some cases before this variable actually exists. So we're testing to see whether the user roles which was set up in the onDialog initialize event has been defined and is valid. If it's not yet valid, we're going to just basically return true. So let's go here now and run this. So we'll go over now into working preview, and now we'll go to the debugger and we'll debug into the code. So what we can see here is that inside the code, roles is a string here. You can see it's sales comma administration. So we'll step over it now, and what we'll do is we'll create an array called allowed roles by taking that comma delimited string and splitting it on a comma. So now we have allowed roles is let's go here and add that to the watch. So we can see that allowed roles is now an array with 2 items in it. And then inside the loop here, we loop over all of the entries in allowed roles, checking to see whether any of them matches the user roles, which is the role that the user is currently in. So we loop over this, and as soon as we get a true, you can see we would, as soon as we got a true, we would break. In this case, we didn't get any true value, so the value is false. And if we just run now, we'll see that those 2 buttons are hidden. But had the user been inside one of the allowed groups, which we can see now, let's go here and change this to sales, marketing, and then management, and now go ahead and run this. So again, we'll open up our debugger here and we'll step over it. So we can see now that basically we get a true now because the allowed role is sales, and that's one of the allowed roles. So now we're going to break out of this function and return true, and you can see now that the 2 buttons are displayed. So what we've shown in this video is how the security groups can be pushed down into a variable in the UX component, and then client-side either show hide expressions or client-side enable expressions can then be used in order to base your decision about whether to show or hide or enable a control based on the role that the user has in the security framework. Thank you very much for watching.